and we've said this numerous times about Kawhi. It's kind of hard to put him, for me at least, it's kind of hard for me to say he's on this echelon of players when the only time when he was like an all-time great player was only full postseasons in his whole entire career. Like, his whole entire career consists of him being hurt or being a role player.
What 2 postseasons? 19 and 20?
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody brought up 2016, and even 2016, I thought was like he was a very good player. He wasn't this all-time player that people know Kawhi to be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I'm like, all right, so I have a guy in Kawhi Leonard, and he only has 2 times in his whole entire career where he's actually completing a postseason run being an all-time great player. How can I sit here and put him over some guys like I said, even John Stockton, even Karl Malone, James Harden?
Mars, the question, right? I think Kawhi is better, but I think Harden is greater. I think when determining someone better, you mostly go off both is production and impact, but one is like more of a shorter span of a window. Another one is more so what you do in your prime. And I think Harden is just did more in his prime than post Kawhi.
Since Kawhi's been in the league, how many years do I actually think he was a better player than James Harden? I came to the conclusion of 1.
That's crazy.
So I'm like, I don't know what I do with that, because James Harden was in the league before Kawhi, so obviously he's winning those years. Cool. Kawhi comes in as a rookie. I think 2012 Harden was better than rookie Kawhi. Shoot me.
Mm-hmm.
Then the first couple years in Houston, when Kawhi was making the finals in San Antonio, but James Harden was legitimately a top 10 player in the league. I think James Harden was better. 2015, Kawhi's like breakout year as an offensive player. I think James Harden was a better player. 2016, a similar thing for Kawhi as an offensive player. Like, he's improving, still can't pass the ball to save his life, but great defender, great shooter, can score. I think James Harden was the better player. 2017, I still think James Harden was better. 2018, Kawhi doesn't play. I think James Harden was better. So 2019, I know people wouldn't disagree with that, but I'm fine with people disagreeing with that. But for me, James Harden was a better player. 2020, the same thing. I think James Harden was a better player, but I'm fine if people want to disagree. 2021, I think, is where we start getting to the conversation of who's the better player between them. I still think it's James Harden, but that's
you still think it's James?
21, Brooklyn James Harden? Yes.
Yeah. No, he tore his hamstring that year. I think until he tore his hamstring.
And Kawhi tore his ACL. So
no, that's gonna get tricky.
You're not gonna get the health argument. I'm sorry, you know.
No. What I'm saying is, Mars. Technically, I'm saying technically that year, Mars. Kawhi got his injury later than Harden. So technically,
his injury in the playoffs.
No, in the playoffs, bro.
Kawhi got in the second round though. James got in the first.
James Harden in Brooklyn was playing. I'm not gonna say he was playing. He was playing like an MVP. But you know, I don't care about the MVP award. I'm just saying James Harden was playing at a top 5 level in the league, in my humble estimation. So 21 James Harden, I still think was better. 22 Kawhi doesn't play, so James Harden wins again by default. Even though I think this is where we see the decline of James Harden. 23 is the first year I'm like, yeah, Kawhi's definitively better than James Harden. Now this year. So 2 years. This year and last year.
All right, before we get into that, because the only reason I said that, Mars, because in terms of just longevity, in terms of being an all-NBA caliber player, Harden has from you just alluded to from 2015 till he tore his hamstring on the Nets. What is that? 6.5 years? 7.5 years?
You don't think he was all-NBA caliber at 14?
Who? James Harden?
Yeah,
probably.
What about last year?
I gotta go through that. I gotta go through that year again. But I know he was definitely a top 20 player.
I think James Harden was all NBA caliber from his first year in Houston, but I'm fine with conceding.
No, that's what I'm saying. My fault. That's my fault. Yeah. I went from first year in Houston to you got it to hamstring on the Nets, right? So my question, so that's 7.5 years, right? So you got a few guys who have ranked above Kawhi in terms of greater, right? Like guys like David Robinson, James Harden, who have great years, but don't have a decade. You know what I'm saying? Like we all just look to how many of those all capital years that Kawhi has? 5?
Regular season alone, 17, 19, 20, 21, 23. 5, yeah. And
What about
this is
16?
All right, so that's what I'm saying. Like
16 is borderline. I'm fine. 16 is borderline. It depends how you feel.
yeah, so there's a possibility he can rack up 2 more years as an all-NBA caliber player.
Sure.
So and that's what my question was initially. Like, if he gets those 2 years, would you say his longevity is comparable to a guy like James Harden?
Well,
Or James Robinson?
regular season longevity, sure. And then you start looking down in those all NBA caliber years at the postseason injuries that take away from his value.
Yeah,
how he doesn't match up with James Harden. So he might match him in regular season, all NBA level seasons, which I don't think he will, but he might. But then when he's completed 2, maybe 3
what would be worse for you though? A drop off in the playoff because of injury, or drop off in the playoff because you're just inconsistent in the playoff?
Well, if it was a drop off with Kawhi due to injury where he just doesn't play as good, we could have the conversation. He doesn't play.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah,
James Harden dropping off and playing worse in the postseason is still better than Kawhi not being on the court.
That's true.
So that if Kawhi was, and I'm not saying Kawhi needs to play through the injuries. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But I'm saying when we're comparing the value he's providing, the person not playing is providing less value than the person playing.
He gets doubled every play.
What makes 2017 Harden better than Kawhi? I think that's when Kawhi came out flat out superstar. I think maybe
That's
Steph,
better
KD,
question.
and LeBron.
James Harden was the 3rd best offensive player on the planet.
And then what about defense?
Defensively, I think he was a negative.
Okay, so you don't factor both of them when you're saying who's a better player. We're not talking this.
I am. They've been factored. I think James Harden brought more value on the court than Kawhi.
As a singular entity, correct?
Yes.
Even with Kawhi's playoff rise in that year.
I believe so.
Sure.
You don't value winning that much, do you?
Neither of them won.
Right.
No, I'm just saying, but Kawhi played better. I'm just saying, like,
Didn't Kawhi eliminate him in the playoff? He quit before Chris Paul got there.
I mean, Kawhi didn't even play that game, the last game. So it's like
that game was a game 6. Like, that was the worst game.
So that has nothing to do with Kawhi. So I'm not going to give Kawhi credit for that.
I'm not bringing that up, but I'm saying you don't value like the playoff translation of Kawhi, because I think Kawhi was probably better in my opinion, since 2016. But you saying 1 year in total?
Bro. 2016, then who?
Since 2016, that's
bro,
like
James Harden.
5 hours worth of basketball.
Bro, that game.
I mean, if you like I said, if you think Kawhi is better than James Harden in 17 because playoff translation, I guess. I mean, 2017 James Harden playoffs wasn't great by any stretch, especially like closeout game. Especially like closeout game against the Spurs. I mean, if that's the reason, I mean, I guess I just think offensively James Harden was so exponential.
I didn't understand how you would say a guy in James Harden who brings more value to Kawhi on the court when Kawhi gave you elite efficiency in 2017. He gave you elite level defense. He gave you elite level offense and elite level playoff translation. So tell me how a guy who is elite on one side of the ball, James Harden, one of the best offensive players, but Kawhi Leonard was also one of the best offensive players and the best defensive player in the NBA in 2017, in my opinion, as well, with also elite level efficiency and great playoff translation. How does he give you more value?
The reason I think KD, Steph, and LeBron were better than Kawhi. What they brought on offense. Kawhi brought on both sides.
Yeah, but the thing is, Kawhi gave you all-time great defense in 2017. Transcended level defense, elite level efficiencies, both in the regular season and the postseason. More portability on James Harden, because James Harden, you know, he played this heel-restricted style of basketball, which Kawhi gave you more portability, also with elite level efficiency on the offensive side of the ball, and also with elite level defense. So I don't understand why in basketball talks, why we ignored the other side of the ball. And it's not like he just gave you like this good.
It hasn't been ignored. I factored it in.
Okay, so you factored it in and you come to the conclusion that James Harden, who gave you one side of the ball at elite level, is better than the guy that gave you all-time great translation defense with also elite level offense. I think if you want to say James Harden is a better offensive player because the playmaking and passing is fine, but I don't think there's a big gap to whereas the defensive gap was Kawhi Leonard in 2016, 2017 was in his prime defensively, and we talking about he was giving you all-time great transcendent level defense, bro.
First of all, I do value peak over longevity by like a long way. And second of all, I value 5-on-5 impact over statistical production. But even with these 2 points, the reason I have Harden over Kawhi is because Kawhi's 5-on-5 impact and his peak being potentially higher. The reason I value these things in general is because of their playoff translation. And the thing is, Kawhi's like, he has like less than 10 playoff series, like as a superstar. This lack of longevity is crazy. When you talk even about the regular season, his total points in the regular season is like one season of points higher than LeBron's total points in the playoffs. Like if you remove Kawhi's highest total points in a regular season in just one season, his points become close to LeBron James in the playoffs. Talking about his career points. That lack of longevity is crazy. That's not just lack of longevity. That's like he has like as many points as Norman Powell in the regular season. That's insane. Like
wait, what are you saying right now, Amir? I'm sorry.
Yeah, like
he's just talking about the lack of
like his lack of longevity. I'm saying
I thought you value peak though.
He values peak over longevity, but when Kawhi Leonard,
but you have to play in the playoffs for that peak to mean anything.
Kawhi Leonard at his best has played in 9 playoff series.
And this is the problem.
And
too,
what year of 17? I keep hearing 7. Is it 2016-17 or 17-18?
16-17. 17-18, Kawhi played 9 games. He was hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt.
So yeah, but this is the thing too. Like when people use this argument,
because just let me finish the point first because we don't have all day. So what I wanted to say is there's a difference between like the method and the end goal of anything in life in general. Like you have money without the things that you buy money with. Money is useless, right? So you have all of these skills and 5-on-5 things and all of the peak, all of these things. It needs to be translated into something. If that something isn't there because the guy spends more time in the hospital than on the court, you could have gotten a 2019 like run from Harden, but we didn't. But the thing is, he had more great playoff series than Kawhi, who is a better playoff performer on average.
Who had more great playoff series?
Yo, Amir cooking.
Definitely more.
No, he did not.
He does. He does.
Right
if you count his playoff series, he has probably twice as many great playoff series as Kawhi.
No, he does not.
You lost me there. Don't say twice.
You lying. Now you
I
lying.
mean, twice is probably a stretch, but he does have a lot more.
Kawhi performs in the playoffs when he's on the court better than James
Harden.
When
he's on
was
the
in his
court.
prime. Sorry, when you sit there and say that Kawhi Leonard's defense is slip, his defensive slip is miles ahead better a defender than James Harden ever was. That is a fact, bro. And then when you look at 2021, where Kawhi Leonard had statistically his best playmaking and passing season of his career, we talk about he's give you improved level playmaking. He's a much better isolation scorer than James Harden that year. Kawhi Leonard was the best isolation scorer, one of the best isolation scorers in the NBA. And when you account to him being the 3-level scorer, being able to post, being able to give you that best portability, being able to give you elite level efficiency from all 3 levels as well, bro. And also, when you look at James Harden, the reason why James Harden had one of his most efficient seasons is because he was getting guarded most of the time by the 3rd or 4th worst defender on the goddamn team because teams were focusing and gearing up on Kyrie and was gearing up on Kevin Durant. Now, when you talk about Kawhi Leonard's value on both sides of the ball from the offense and defense perspective, give you elite level defense, bro. And also in the playoffs, give you that elite level playoff translation, something that James Harden has never came close to his career when Kawhi was the case of having one of the greatest volume postseason runs in NBA history. The man was shooting 57% from the field in the postseason run. I think when you value all of that, when you value that Kawhi was a better offensive player, yes, James Harden was a better playmaker and passer, but I do think Kawhi was a better isolation scorer. I think Kawhi Leonard was a better scorer from the post. I think Kawhi has better portability. I think
he's a better isolation scorer. Let him finish. Let him explain.
I think Kawhi Leonard was also miles ahead a better defender, and I think that gap when you look at that between James Harden and Kawhi, when you look at it, that Kawhi Leonard's impact defensively was literally anchoring a team that was a top 10 defensive unit. that season as well, bro, and you also look at where his value was presented on both sides of the ball, I think that's better value than what James Harden was giving you in 21.
So when you compare Kawhi and Harden's efficiency in the playoffs, Kawhi shut up early. Kawhi completely shits on Harden when it comes to Kawhi's efficiency in the playoffs. But the point you're missing, Mars, is that Harden in his prime with Houston was always an ISO player. So in Philly, one of the reasons they let Doc Rivers go was Harden wanted to play ISO ball in the playoffs, and Doc Rivers wanted more ball movement. And so Philly settled on an ISO offense in the playoffs with Harden, but it didn't work because Harden kept wearing down. Harden didn't score a single point in the fourth quarter of games 5, 6, or 7. But when you look at Harden individually and Houston's offense in the playoffs, Houston and Harden kept dropping significantly in the playoffs because ISO ball, like DeRozan, McGrady, and Harden, it doesn't work in the playoffs against good defensive teams when a team has 2 weeks. When a team has 2 weeks to game plan for one player in a simple offense, they always will limit and shut it down. And that's why Harden and his offenses dropped significantly in the playoffs. Well, Kawhi proved in San Antonio and Toronto he can play in an offense with ball movement and off-ball motion, and that's why Kawhi's numbers and the numbers of the offenses he played in Toronto and San Antonio always stayed high and were better in the playoffs, while Harden was dropping off a cliff against good defensive teams. Harden in his prime couldn't play in systems with off-ball movement and more ball movement, while Kawhi could, and that's a big part of the reason why Harden kept dropping in the playoffs and his offenses did, while Kawhi didn't. Kawhi was also much better. No, but the other thing is, Harden in Houston, D'Antoni was all about analytics. So D'Antoni didn't want mid-range shots. He wanted shots in the paint and three-point shots. So Harden never developed a consistent mid-range game, and that's why Harden couldn't close games in the playoffs. Harden wasn't getting foul calls in the paint, and he would get tired. He wouldn't be able to hit threes. So because Harden wasn't a good enough mid-range shooter, he wasn't able to close the way Kawhi was, and that's why Harden had issues with choking, not at the end of games multiple years too.
Enjoy, wait,